Hello, and welcome to Apologetics 101, and I am your host, Christian Apologist, Brian. Keep going. Alright, I'm a little conflicted about the uh, this particular video that I'm producing, that I'm presenting. The reason is because, on one hand, I'm happy that I'm starting a new video series, The Fallen, as it's called. Um, And of course, I'm going to be using the word fallen in different senses. Next week, we're going to be talking about the martyrdoms of the apostles, and the week after that, we're going to get more specifically into the fallacy that a lot of skeptics make with Christianity when they look at atrocities that have happened and they blame Christianity and that sort of thing. And we'll get a little bit more into that on the second week. This is not an open-ended series. It won't have an end to it. The third part will be the final end to the series. Um, the first part we'll get into in a little bit. That's the depressing part of why I'm so conflicted. But another thing that I'm happy about is that this is the first time I've used OBS as far as making a video presentation. Now, I did make a video presentation before and messed up completely because of the video settings, and now I'm having to do it. Also, I apologize that it's late. This is one of the reasons it's late. Another reason is because I had to take a friend of mine the day to the hospital, and of course I've been researching the matter that this video is about all week long as well. And I've had to work a lot this week, so all these factors contribute to this video being a little later than normal, and I do apologize for that. Sometimes things happen, I guess. Um, but at least we're here. We're here. And OBS, so far I like OBS, but if you don't really know what you're doing, I mean, I watch a lot of tutorials on it, but I don't have a lot of experience with it. Like I said, this is the very first time I've ever used it. So there's some technical issues that I had to overcome in the settings and things like that to make this video work properly. Hopefully it will work properly and that I won't need to do it in a different way, because I actually like the way they set it up. I got these different various scenes that I can go at. It makes it a lot easier than having to do so much editing to try to put those things in there. Um, so I actually like how I'm doing this. Um, but right now, uh, and of course it's got studio mode, so if I do ever do live stream, I can actually do my adjustments while I'm talking to you guys. So I think this is a very cool software. In spite of my technical issues, I I put it toward me not having that much experience and knowledge with OBS, and so and some of the things in the settings were messed up and things like that. So it messed up the video, it messed up the audio. I got the audio back on track, and the video was still messed up, so I had to work on that this morning to try to get the video back on track so it wouldn't lag and stuff, like it was doing. And so, but I think I did a pretty good job, hopefully, this time around. But all these things contribute to its lateness, this video's lateness. Why am I saddened by this video? It's because of what this video is about. Um, I actually wasn't going to do this particular series. I wasn't going to do this particular video. My original intent was to try to do something on the alleged contradictions of the Bible, which I've been meaning to do for weeks on end. I might have mentioned that in previous videos as well. And I really wanted to do that, to get to those alleged countries. Eventually, I'm gonna get to that video series. Definitely, I really want to. But this was important to present. People don't do videos like this because they want to. They do them because they have to. Because there were collateral damage involved, and issues there, and issues involved that people might pounce on Christian apologetics the instant that this becomes viral, which is already viral. It's all over the internet. Lots of other Christian apologists have made videos on this. I wasn't actually sure what I would be able to add to this conversation. Um, but I'm hoping I can add at least the more extensive apologetic element to it to discuss whether this has any impact on Christian apologetics, the truth of Christianity, etc. And so I'm going to add that to this conversation as well. Now, there are other videos out there that have added that to the conversation to some extent, but I'm going to do it a little bit further because we're going to talk about um, Christian apologetics as far as um, whether or not if that has any impact on Christian truth of Christianity. But basically, this video is about Ravi Zacharias, who is the world's most famous Christian apologist. The world's most famous Christian apologist. Before he died, by around mid last year, around May of 2020, and before his death, he was immensely respected, both by the Christian apologetic community as well as the Christianity community at large. Even his enemies, his skeptics, was amazed by his eloquency and that sort of thing. And so this fall is hitting all of us very, very hard. It appears that Ravi Zacharias has led a double life, one that nobody knew about, that has shattered the Christian apologetic community. And by shattered, I don't mean messed up our arguments or anything like that. I mean, it just devastated us. It was unexpected. We didn't expect it. We thought that this was a man of great integrity, of earned respect, and so it hit us hard. It hit us hard. When I first heard the news, when I first started doing research on it and seeing videos of other Christian apologists, Mike Winger's got one out. I'm going to be linking 3 of these videos in my description box below, just to let you know. Mike Winger's, David Woods from Acts 17 Apologetics, as well as Mike Licona's as well. Mike Licona does a 5-minute video basically of whether this impacts Christian arguments. David Wood also talks about whether this has any impact on Christian arguments that I think is relevant. Mike Winger's is really good because I think he goes through all of this report that we're fixing to look at. He goes through the entire report and he comments on it as he's going through it. I think he's the only one that has tired. I think my video is going to come close to that. I am not going to read all of the report though. I don't think I can really add anything to the conversation with what Mike did. And he does a really good job of it. And there's no way I could ever really add to what Mike did on the report. So I'm going to link his video in the description below. He does a good job of it. David Wood does a good job, and so does Mike Licona. And I'm not saying that other apologists didn't do a good job. I think all of them did that I've seen so far. They've contributed something to it. What they say was completely correct. I agree 100% with what their position was on the truthfulness of Christianity involved with skeptics attacking Christianity, thinking that, oh well, this apologist character was flawed, therefore his arguments must be flawed, and that just doesn't follow logically. And as we'll see in this video as well, I'm going to probably introduce the logical element and what logical fallacy commits when people do that, because a lot of times you hear people doing that, like, I don't want to go to church because there's all these hypocrites there and that sort of thing, and people say, well, you whenever if I talk to somebody about lust or something like that, and they'll say, like, well, you've lusted after women. as if automatically me lusting after women before in my life makes it any more right. There's sometimes I do things that are wrong and I shouldn't do them. It doesn't change the fact that they're wrong to do them. And so that's actually a fallacy in logic. But we'll get more into that in the eventual scheme of this video. I'm going to try to keep this video at average length, but it could be longer than normal because we are trying to go over a good deal of the report. I'm not going to be going over all of it. What I'm going to be doing is choosing highlighted areas and just kind of skimming through a few things, and then and getting main focus of my going through the report at all is pretty much focused on what kind of evidence they have. Because the first thing people, like I said, when I first heard of it, I was completely in shock. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe it. This great Christian apologist that everybody knows and respected committed these acts. I wanted to believe it was all made up. I wanted to believe it was a conspiracy. I don't believe we didn't have all the facts. I wanted to believe all those things. But what I want to believe and what is true are independent from each other. So I had to sit there and look at the evidence and the arguments to know for sure where the evidence points. And the evidence that Ravi Zacharias, I hate using this term, but lots of other Christian apologists have used it and they are not wrong. Sex predator. And I hate to say that, but that's exactly what he did, because he groomed women, he stalked them out, particularly at spas, including 2 spas that he co-owned, and he made sexual advances to them. He got new pictures of them. One woman described her experience as rape. And yes, if you're wondering if he's married, yes, he was married. He lied about it because in 2017 there was a woman that did come forward with this information. That Ravi Zacharias had done the same thing, groomed her and made sexual advances to her. And she was, and when we mean by grooming, we mean that he basically gave her a feeling of ease, like he could talk to her, like he could be around or talk to him and be around him, and that he wouldn't do anything to hurt her and that sort of thing. Just gave her a sense that he could confide in him, be comfortable with around him, that sort of thing. Once the more comfortable she became around him, or more comfortable all these women came around, the more at ease he became to make his advances. And of course, pictures and emails and things like that were found on his phone as well. Like I said, he lied about it. He said he gave all of his electronic devices to his lawyers, and this is what it says in the report. And his lawyers, didn't think that, or the lawyers didn't find anything on it. But then again, they were his lawyers, and he could have lied, like giving him anything at all. We don't know. But when we did retrieve the electronic devices, they had stuff on it. There's no way to come off this and say he was innocent. If a person wants to say, if you're one of those people that they're just like, I have to believe that he's innocent no matter what, we shouldn't judge them by according to sin. If you're like that and you just really want to defend him over this, then I would suggest reading the report in its entirety. Read the video Thompson had. We're going to see a series of clips from that video. I'm not going to play the full video, of course, but I'm going to do a series of clips from that video, and then you can watch that video in its entirety. I am linking that in the description box below. Okay, so it will be in the description box below. And watch that video in full, read the report, hear what other Christian apologists are saying on the subject, what evidence they have. Read the report in its full. I will also link the report in the description box below as well, so you can read the full report. I've read it multiple times. Like I said, I already did this video once before as well, so I'm going to be going through that again, and it's very telling. It's very telling. But if you're really wanting to defend him and think it's some kind of conspiracy, at least get all your facts straight before you comment in the comments and say, I don't think he did it at all. Make sure you got the full scope of what the evidence is and what they have. I'm going to try my best to focus on that when I talk about the report, but it might be a good idea for you to do your own research on it. So if this is the first beginning point where this is the first time you ever heard of anything about what Ravi Zacharias did, then don't make this your stopping place either. Go and do more research on it. I would prefer you to do that before you start disagreeing with this very highly volatile situation, because we want to make sure we have all the facts. All right. All right. Let's dive in. Let's go to the report first. Now, of course, before the end of this video, I am going to discuss if this has any impact on truth of Christianity whatsoever, because I think that's very important. That's one of the reasons, one of the main reasons. It's not the only reason. It's not even the top reason. The top reason, obviously, is that I feel for these people that he hurt, and that I think they need prayer for. I think they need closure. I think they need some sense of stability, and I think that as the body of Christ, we need to be united on this. So, yeah. But one of the main things is that I do want to focus on the apologetic element. That would fit a little bit more with my channel as well, because I want to show that the truth of Christianity is not impacted by this whatsoever. And I'm going to expose the fallacy that commits when people do think that way. All right. Let's go to the report. All right, report. This was done by an independent investigation. It was done by the Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. That's the ministry that Ravi Zacharias founded, RZIM. Hired an independent agency to investigate this matter. Okay, understand that. Okay, that's important to understand. Because if you're going to accuse them of bias, understand the bias is in the opposite direction, because this hurts them as much as it does anybody. Well, not necessarily more, but it does hurt them a lot, because RZIM was part of the problem whenever Ravi Zacharias was claiming that, because they were defending Ravi Zacharias, and Ravi Zacharias used them like pawns. Now, that doesn't mean that we should not look at RZIM as collateral damage as well, that they were just used as pawns. There are good people in RZIM that have nothing to do with it. In fact, I would argue that probably nobody at RZIM even knew what Ravi was up to, although there were areas of suspicious activity, as we'll see in the report. But don't look at RZIM or even Ravi's family members as being guilty parties, because they didn't know what was going on either. Nobody knew anything about that. If you want to blame somebody, blame Ravi Zacharias, because the fault was his and his alone. And it's partially our fault, because nobody wanted to believe, when Lori Thompson came out with her report, everybody wanted to believe Ravi was innocent. Nobody wanted to believe he was guilty of it. They thought that he was just a victim of extortion. But the reality of it is that he was very much at fault. All right. Report of independent investigation into sexual misconduct of Ravi Zacharias, February 9th, 2021. So this was early this month. So you kind of imagine this is very recent development. Apologists have been producing videos like crazy in the past 2 weeks. This is where I got my research this week on the matter. That and the report and Lori Thompson's video, and I've been watching just about everything that was made on this subject matter, just to get an idea. And I've read this report more than once. All right, let's dive in. All right. Okay. On September 29th, 2020, Christianity Today, that's a famous Christian publication, published an article citing allegations by 3 anonymous sources that late Ravi Zacharias sexually harassed them at 2 spas he co-owned. Miller & Martin PLLC was hired by Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, RZIM, to conduct an independent investigation into these allegations. RZIM management agreed that we would report to a committee of the RZIM Board of Directors. Both RZIM management and the board committee confirmed that the investigation extended to any other allegations of sexual misconduct that might arise from our investigation. We confirm one of the three accounts described in the Christianity Today article and found significant evidence of sexual misconduct involving additional massage therapists. We also reviewed Mr. Zacharias' electronic devices and found electronic or evidence of text and email-based relationships with women who were not his wife, as well as over 200 selfie-style photographs of women. Some of those images were of nude women as well. Okay, they talk about the scope of the investigation. Though our investigation was not limited to the spa allegations reported in Christianity Today, we had to make judgment calls about how broadly to investigate. For example, we did not enlist resources on the ground in Asia, where Mr. Zacharias frequently traveled, to locate and interview witnesses there. With over 200 massage therapist contacts in Mr. Zacharias' phone, included many overseas, we did not think it worthwhile to attempt an exhaustive survey, and instead sought to speak with those we thought about likely to have relevant information, or who otherwise reached out to us. At times we received secondhand and uncorroborated information that we chose not to pursue, and instead focused on more definite leads. These were not limitations placed on us by RZIM or the board committee, but decisions that we made primarily because we found enough evidence to answer the ultimate question we were hired to investigate. Now, I want to point something out there because I want to make a plug on the resurrection, because sometimes Matt Dillahunty will argue something like, well, we don't know who these people were in this creed, as if somehow that undermines the reliability of the creed in the process. Now, of course, we do actually know who some of the people were. We know who the 12 disciples were, for example. We knew who Peter and James was, who's also mentioned directly in the creed, explicitly. We know who Paul is, even though Paul wasn't originally in the creed. He adds his name to the creed, so we know who he is. But it's not relevant for us to know everybody in the creed. It's only relevant that Paul and the people he's writing to knew who were in there. That's what's relevant. It's only relevant that they knew who the people were. Now, of course, this doesn't have no bearing on being able to sit there and have all this evidence. Now, understand, skeptics will try to argue that one of the future evidence is going to disprove it. No, because any evidence that we find or discover in the future is going to just rubber stamp what we already know. All right, it's not going to somehow undermine the very good evidence that we already have. So what they're saying is that they have sufficient evidence to prove the thing in question, and they don't need more evidence, because any more evidence will only make the case even stronger than it already is, and which is very strong. So this idea that somehow we're going to find future evidence that somehow is going to undermine the very good case for the resurrection is not a very good argument, because it doesn't undermine this very strong evidence we already have. So any future evidence is just going to feather rubber stamp that evidence, clarify maybe some missing details, or make the case even stronger. That's all it's going to really do. While we are limited, continuing with the report, while we are limited our engagement in an investigation of sexual misconduct, we face the issue of what conduct fits that description. Some may claim that it excludes communication that does not result in physical contact. But we spoke with many witnesses, both within and outside RZIM, who saw the question of Mr. Zacharias' alleged sexual misconduct as intertwined with allegations by a woman named Lori Ann Thompson, which you're going to hear from here in a little bit, who claimed in 2017 that Mr. Zacharias engaged in sexually explicit online conversations with her and solicited indecent photos of her. As expressed by one witness who worked closely with Mr. Zacharias, Mr. Thompson's account at least makes the spy allegations more plausible and vice versa. Many people within RZIM felt strongly that the Thompson matter, which resulted in a confidential settlement agreement, left several questions unanswered, and RZIM leadership encouraged us to include it in our investigation. This report explains our effort to investigate that matter and describes other evidence that is consistent with Mr. Thompson's or Miss Thompson's allegations. The scope of our engagement did not extend to RZIM finances, possible retaliation against employees, or other aspects of the organization's culture. This report comments on some of these issues as necessary to discuss sexual misconduct, but this was not an investigation into such topics. Similarly, we did not find evidence that anyone within RZIM or its board knew that Mr. Zacharias had engaged in sexual misconduct. Now, remember what I said about RZIM. This is important, that they are just as much collateral damage, just as much as a victim as other, probably not more so, but they are victims of it. And so this is the product of one man. So if you know the family members of Ravi Zacharias, don't go after them. They are just as much hurt, and they're suffering for this. I watched a video on Ravi's daughter, Naomi Zacharias. I don't know if she was talking about the incident. Maybe she was, but she was talking about going through a lot with it. So, but anyway, continue on. Okay, they talked about their methodology. Says the overwhelming majority of those we interviewed requested confidentiality and asked to have these identities kept anonymous. To encourage witnesses to speak candidly, both RZIM management and the committee of the RZIM board to which we report agreed that they would not have access to witness identities. As a result, and because most witnesses spoke to us in a reliance on our assurance of confidentiality, we are not revealing names of any witnesses in this report or otherwise. Now, Lori-Ann Thompson is the exception to the rule because that account already came out in 2017. She's actually the only one that we actually know by name specifically. Now, what about this? Some people might jump on this real quick. Yeah, we don't know who they were. But, Matt Dillahunty makes a similar argument with the resurrection. And he argues that we don't know who all these people were in the creed, but we do know who some of them were. We know who the 12 disciples were. We know who Peter and James, who explicitly are mentioned in the creed, were. We know who Paul is, even though Paul wasn't originally in the creed. He does add himself to the creed. It only matters, though, that Paul and the people at the time knew who they were. It doesn't matter that we don't know every name that's referenced in the creed. Matt Dillahunty seems to try to connect this somehow to the reliability of the resurrection or the resurrection account if we don't know the specific names, but that's not the case. It only matters that they did. So in this case, it only matters that they knew who the witnesses were. It doesn't mean that we have to know every name, especially when we saw what happened with Lori-Ann Thompson, whose video or some clips from that video is going to be shown pretty soon, and where we talk about where she talked about her situation, and because of what happened to her, her whole life got turned upside down. Ravi Zacharias went after her and her husband's reputation, and destroyed any semblance of respect that people had for them in the communities where they live. They ultimately had to move. It affected their finances. All kinds of other stuff started happening as a result of Ravi attacking them. So we've seen what will happen in response to it, and I can't blame them for wanting to keep these women names confidential. It only matters that they exist. It does not matter that we don't know who they are specifically. I want to keep that in mind, because the idea that somehow their witness is less evidential, the way Matt Dillahunty argues, doesn't follow logically. There's as much evidence as a witness, even if we don't know the exact names that they hold. Okay, let's continue this. Okay, let's go to the involvement in spas. Christianity Today reported that Mr. Zacharias was involved with Touch of Eden and Jivan Wellness Spas. According to, I don't know how to pronounce that, Jivan. According to corporate records on file with Georgia Secretary of State, Touch of Eden was incorporated in 2004 and administratively dissolved in 2008. Jivan Wellness was incorporated in 2008 and administratively dissolved in 2015. Based on witness interviews, we believe that the business actually closed around 2012. The two spas operate in the same location in Alpharetta, Georgia, one forming shortly after the other closed down. Mr. Zacharias is not listed on incorporation documents filed with Georgia Secretary of State for either company, and he did not appear to have any role in managing the day-to-day operations of the spas. He told one massage therapist he was a silent investor in both spas, and one of the owners of Jivian Wellness told us that Mr. Zacharias invested as well, but we were not able to confirm how much, if any, money he invested. We understand, however, that Mr. Zacharias was involved in the concept of opening of Jevon Wellness. He had an interest in Eastern treatment and wanted to bring that influence to the spa, including designing a treatment room specifically for Ayurvedic massage. Multiple witnesses told us that he arranged for massage therapists he met in Asia to train the Jivan Wellness staff in these techniques. And one told us that he tried to recruit her from Thailand to work at the spa. He had a Jivan Wellness email address and he stored the employee identification number, EIN, on his phone. Mr. Zacharias told at least one witness that he intended for Jivan Wellness to support RZIM's philanthropic ministry, Wellspring International, and there are notes on one of his electronic devices that are consistent with that plan. Another witness had a vague recollection that this was the initial plan as well. We did not have access to Jivan Wellness's financial records, though, so we do not know whether Jivan Wellness ever provided financial support to Wellspring. Of the three women who we believe were sources for Christianity Today article, only one agreed to speak with us. The information she related is included in the following section. Another declined to speak with us on the advice of her attorney. We were unable to confirm the identity of the third woman. Interaction with massage therapists. This is good. This is the important. I say good, not to be unsympathetic to the situation. I meant good as in it in the terms of the article and the report. This is going to introduce evidence from these witnesses. Although we were able to interview only one of the massage therapists anonymously referred to in the Christianity Today article. Our investigation revealed other massage therapists who corroborated her account. Several massage therapists confirmed Mr. Zacharias' frequent effort to try for more than a massage, as one therapist put it. 8 therapists reported that Mr. Zacharias would start the massage either completely nude or would remove the sheets during the massage. 6 therapists reported that he always or almost always had an erection during the massage. 4 therapists reported that he would either touch his genitals or ask them to touch his genitals. And 5 therapists reported that he touched or rubbed them inappropriately. Some therapists pushed back on his behavior and with some success. One reported that she would redrape him if he removed the sheets, told him when she was uncomfortable, and told him he would have to leave if he did not stop. One therapist responded to his attempts to rub her legs by moving his arms back onto the table and at times even binding his arms with sheets into a sling to keep them from wandering. She refused his frequent requests to touch his genitals. Another therapist told him she did not feel comfortable and would stop him when he would rub her leg up to mid-thigh and grab her waist, which was an obvious cue that he wanted more. Another therapist who refused when he asked her to go lower, and massaged closer to his genitals, and she admonished him on several occasions when he wouldn't start touching himself. He asked this same person to travel overseas to massage him on trips, but she was not comfortable with him and was afraid she would not be able to afford a plane ticket home if she felt the need to return early. She reported that she would see how more than massage would have happened if a therapist did not feel comfortable speaking up and pushing back. Some therapists reported even more serious and sustained sexual assaults that involved over time. Two therapists obliged his request to masturbate him, telling that one of them it was necessary because his pain was ligamental, which sounds very much like an excuse. While 5 women reported that he touched and grabbed their legs, 2 said he eventually went beyond that with them, rubbing their breasts and genitals. One therapist further reported that she was struggling financially, and Mr. Zacharias offered to help pay for her schooling and monthly living expenses, in addition to compensating her for the massage. See below in the discussion of Touch of Hope. She told us that the more we saw each other, the more he became comfortable and wanted to go further. She told us she felt obliged to do what he asked because of the financial support he provided. In addition to these direct accounts, these and other witnesses claim to know or have heard of Mr. Zacharias' abuse or attempted abuse of other massage therapists, but we did not credit such hearsay. Only one of the witnesses we interviewed said that Mr. Zacharias engaged in sexual intercourse. This witness reported details of many encounters over a period of years that she described as rape. I mentioned that earlier. To protect her identity, this report does not disclose many of the details she shared with us. Some information is related below because aspects of Mr. Zacharias' behavior towards this witness, were similar to his conduct with other therapists. Specifically, the use of ministry funds to provide financial support, the effort to elicit personal information about a difficult past, and Mr. Zacharias' use of religious language during their encounters. All right, let me explain 2 of those things that they mentioned. The financial support thing, that's what he did. He took money that was donated to his ministry and he used it to support his sexual habits. For all you who's big about someone trying to take tithe money out of the tithing plate, or a pastor that is struggling hard financially and takes money out of the church treasury for his own personal habits or problems. Well, Ravi Zacharias is doing that very thing, or did that the very thing. He can't do it anymore. He's dead, but he did do that very thing. And his use of religious language is going to come up more than once during this report. So it's important to kind of emphasize that. He used, basically, like one woman said, he called him his reward from God for living a service to God. And that he credited with the Bible accounts of more than one wife. We'll get more into that later. And this kind of stuff. Basically, he abused biblical texts. He should have known better to use them in the light that he was using them, including on reference of polygamy, and he abused that for his own purpose, to get these women to help with his sexual appetites and to go further in that. And I'm going to say something. As a Christian, not just as a Christian apologist, but as a Christian, I'm not too fond of the idea of somebody using the belief systems of another to appease sinful desires. I'm not into that idea. My beliefs are sacred. My worship of God is sacred. I believe strongly that God exists and that He's deserving of worship. I believe strongly that Jesus died on the cross for my sins. I believe strongly that the Bible is indeed the inerrant, inspired Word of God. And I believe strongly that as Christians, we should honor Christ both with our words and with our deeds. And using language from the Bible and things like that just to pressure somebody who's a person of faith into doing what they want them to do, I think is bad. I think in itself is a sin. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't abuse the Bible that way. We shouldn't take advantage of what other people believe to fit our own desires that way. What we believe is sacred, and what other people believe on that is going to be viewed as sacred. I'm not saying that that makes them right or wrong about what they believe, or you can't challenge someone's belief or whatnot. But what I am saying is that simply that you don't take, if you really believe in God, if you really believe in Jesus, if you really believe in the Bible, then you don't take those things to pressure somebody else to doing something that would violate those in the process. And then make them think they're not violating God's word, they're agreeing with it when they're not. This is religious peer pressure at its finest moment. You don't do that. You don't pressure somebody in that manner. And I feel like he did just that. He says, the witness told us that their relationship began as a normal massage therapist-client relationship, and she came to think of him as a father figure. He elicited information about her faith and her financial situation. She reported that after he arranged for the ministry to provide her with financial support, he required sex from her. According to this witness, Mr. Zacharias used religious expressions to gain compliance. As she was raised to be a person of faith, she reported that he made her pray with him to thank God for the opportunity they both received. She said he called her his reward for living a life of servitude of service to God. And he referenced the godly men in the Bible with more than one wife. Let me stop there for a second. All right. I spoke a little bit about this when I did my last video about does the Bible condone slavery? Remember, we talked about descriptive versus prescriptive text. Prescriptive, they have it where they're commanding something or they're condoning something, where descriptive is using descriptive language to describe what's happening. This is descriptive language. People in the Bible did have more than one wife, but that didn't mean that God was condoning that action. As a Christian apologist, including the world's most famous Christian apologist, he would have been very well known that was true. So why in the world is he saying, oh, well, these people in the Bible had more than one wife, so it made it okay what I'm doing with you? This is someone, not just because he has a bad interpretation of the Bible, this is someone who is intentionally using abusing the Bible and intentionally misinterpreting the Bible for his own gain. This is not good, and the more we read, the more bad it's going to be. Let's continue. She said he wanted her not over to speak out against him, or she would be responsible for the millions of souls whose salvation would be lost if his reputation was damaged. If someone was truly Christian, he would have known that their salvation would not have been lost. I don't know what denomination he was part of. He could have believed in doctrine of conditional security, but I don't know. But either way, how arrogant do you have to be to think, if my ministry falls apart today, all the people that were saved under it ain't going to be saved no more? Then what's going to happen when he died? You think those people that came to faith through his ministry are somehow going to, oh, well, he's dead now, so I guess I'm going to go back to my old ways? No, they're not going to do that. Most people are not going to do that unless they weren't Christian to begin with. I don't worship a person. This is going to come up later because I don't worship people. I don't worship person. I worship, other than the person of Jesus Christ, I worship Jesus. I worship the triune God, but I don't worship persons. I don't put my faith in persons. And this is the reason why I don't. Because human beings are human beings. They're fallen race. We're a fallen race. We're fallen people. We have sin in us. We're born sinners. We make mistakes, yes. Now, of course, this is not simply a mistake. This is someone who is methodologically hunting these women down for sexual appetites. This goes beyond just simply, getting mad on one particular occasion or saying a cuss word because you got too angry. This is going much further than that. This is someone who is systematically, methodologically seeking out women, grooming them, and then trying to get them to appease his sexual appetites. This is not good. And using religious language as what I call religious peer pressure to accomplish that goal, not good. A number of aspects of this account involve similar behavior and escalation as the accounts of other therapists who would not have known and who treated Mr. Zacharias in different contexts over time. The therapist he reportedly targeted for more than a massage discussed a similar modus operandi of building their trust and making them feel at ease. As one put it, he wasn't frisky initially. Some therapists described a process that began with probing conversation with him, asking about their families and backgrounds, often delving into deeply personal issues such as financial struggles or emotionally broken backgrounds. For example, one therapist reported that Mr. Zacharias spent the first half of their first massage session asking about her spiritual journey and prior abuse. Now, if this was coming from a typical evangelist, we would expect that. I mean, this is something you would expect from typically from an evangelist. But when someone's doing it to ease them into comfortability with him, just so he can take advances of them, that's a different thing entirely. This set her at ease and made her feel that he cared for her as a person before he later asked her to massage his genitals. Another woman reported that he would talk about her career plans and efforts to improve her financial situation while he was massaging her breast. She never came forward because she thought, who would believe me against a famous Christian leader? Some therapists who reported that Mr. Zacharias paid very well or would leave large tips and gave gifts that were at times lavish, such as a Persian rug or a Louis Vuitton wallet with $500 inside. Basically, he was buying their silence and buying his opportunity to take advances of them. Mr. Zacharias also used his ministry to financially support some of his long-term therapists. Accordingly to a description in the notes application of one of Mr. Zacharias' phone, Touch of Hope, TOH, was a humanitarian effort on the part of RZIM meeting short-term needs for long-term gains. We learned it was purely a discretionary fund with no clear guidelines governing how the money would be granted. We would not set out to investigate TOH in depth, but in reviewing documents provided by RZIM, we noticed that a significant portion of the wire payments from that fund went to or for the benefit of 4 women, all of whom were at times Mr. Zacharias' massage therapists. TOH funds paid for 2 of these women to attend massage therapy school after they were already in the regular rotation of therapists despite their apparent lack of formal training or license. In other words, he was just grooming them because, he wanted them. He was putting them in a position where they would be trained as therapists, so that way he could sit there and use them the way he wanted to use. One recipient was a massage therapist he met around 2014 in Bangkok, and with whom he appears to have had at least an emotional relationship, discussed in a different section below. He used TOH to pay $40,000 to her to attend culinary school in the United States. That's a cooking school. Each of these 4 women received monthly support from TOH for extended periods of time. We accept as true that Mr. Zacharias had significant and at times debilitating lower back pain, and that he found relief from massage therapist treatments at the hands of trained professionals. Indeed, several of the therapists we interviewed reported a normal therapist-client relationship with him and said that he wasn't always professional or always he was always professional. One of these therapists said that Mr. Zacharias was always fully nude of his treatment, but she said she was told it was a cultural thing and necessary for treatment of his pain. Another reported that he frequently got erections during the treatment, which she said is not uncommon for male clients. There are likely other therapists who would similarly report that they did not experience inappropriate behavior. Mr. Zacharias spent much of his year on the road, typically had at least one male RZIM staff member travel with him. These travel assistants provided the appearance of accountability, so Mr. Zacharias could say he did not travel alone and was never alone with a woman. Indeed, all of his travel assistants we interviewed said that they never observed anything improper. Most of them were aware, however, that Mr. Zacharias had a massage therapist who was often with him to provide treatment during his travels. Several museum staff members reported to us that they were concerned about Mr. Zacharias traveling with a personal masseuse, not because they feared actual impropriety, but because they feared the appearance of impropriety. A high-level RZM staff member expressed concerns to Mr. Zacharias about it and encouraged him to stop traveling with her. In response, Mr. Zacharias grew angry and barely spoke to the staff member for a long period of time. He was effectively sent to Siberia, as another staff member recalled. Their relationship never fully recovered. The massage therapist who had at times traveled with Mr. Zacharias was not the only woman from whom he received massage during his travels. The travel assistants told us that Mr. Zacharias would often retire to his room at night, and his schedule often included large chunks of time and even entire days when he was alone. A search of his plane records and text messages revealed that he would often arrange for massage treatments in his hotel room when he was likely alone. Accordingly to his messages, at times he would meet the therapist in the hotel lobby, and at other times he would direct them to come straight to his room. On one occasion in February 2016, he slipped his room key to a massage therapist by placing it in a book, directing her to come to his room 2 minutes after she got the book from him. In addition to finding alone time when he traveled with others, Mr. Zacharias traveled alone to Bangkok and other parts of Southeast Asia for substantial periods of time. RZIM staff described these as writing trips where he would work on his latest book. On such trips, he would stay for days and sometimes weeks alone. According to a text message to a Thai masseuse in February 2016, he spent his days writing with his nights receiving massage treatments. All of the massage therapists we interviewed now live in the United States, and we have little insight into whether Mr. Zacharias engaged in inappropriate massage behavior when in Asia. We also learned that for several years, Mr. Zacharias owned 2 apartments in Bangkok. Property records confirm that he bought one of his apartments in 2010 and the other in 2011, both in a residential tower in the Khong Son district of Bangkok. He sold them both in 2015. The notes application of his phones describes addresses that corresponded with the property records, along with information about common area and maintenance fees for the 2 units. The notes application also reveals that between 2010 and 2014, he spent a total of 256 days in one of these apartments and sought rent reimbursement from RZIM for these days. The other apartment in the same building, but on a different floor, housed one of the massage therapists. An entry on Mr. Zacharias' phone for the lower floor unit included this massage therapist's initials. Now we're getting into Lori-Ann Thompson. Okay. I'm not going to cover this as much on Lori-Ann Thompson. We'll cover see the first paragraph maybe, and we'll go from there. I've already spoken about the situation with Lori and Thompson, but I just wanted to briefly summarize this so that y'all understand this before y'all see the video of Lori and Thompson. As mentioned above, the scope of our investigation included allegations involving Mr. Zacharias and a Canadian woman named Lori Ann Thompson. Ms. Thompson accused him of engaging in sexual explicit online conversations with her and also soliciting and ultimately receiving many indecent photos of her. She claimed that he groomed her as he gained her trust as a spiritual guide, confidante, and notable Christian statesman, after which she opened up her life to him to the point where he exercised a controlling influence over her as one with spiritual authority. He used this influence, she claimed, to exploit her vulnerability to satisfy his own sexual desires. While they were never physically intimate, Miss Thompson alleged that they engaged in an emotional relationship through electronic communication and that culminating in him asking for photographs of her, including nudes, which she sent, in order to avoid protracting and public litigation. On April 27, 2017, the Thompsons sent Mr. Zacharias a letter demanding $5 million in exchange for a release of claims against him and the ministry. In response, Mr. Zacharias sued the Thompsons in federal court for extortion under the Federal Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization RICO statute on July 31, 2017. The Thompsons and Mr. Zacharias mediate and confidentially resolve their disputes in late fall 2017. You're going to see more of this because Lori Ann Thompson is going to go over some of this in the video in some of the clips I have. The resolution reportedly included a non-disclosure agreement, NDA. RZIM management informed us that they do not have and have not seen the NDA, and therefore RZIM, which was not a party to that lawsuit, was not able to provide it to us. This is something that we have to really be in prayer for, because the person who has the NDA is not releasing it. This woman needs closure for this situation. Please pray, whoever has that NDA, whoever has access to that NDA, release it so she can be open, so she can find support for this. She can find closure. This woman is suffering over this, and her whole life is turned upside down because of it. And we need to sit there and do whatever we can to convince whoever has this NDA to release it from it, because they're not releasing her from it. And so that's going to be apparent too. It's going to mention it in the report. It's going to, Lori Ann Thompson is going to mention in the video that we're about to see, or at least some clips from that scenes that mention it. We are therefore not in a position to evaluate the scope of the NDA or the possibility that either side may have previously violated it. Although, according to Lori Ann Thompson, he does violate the NDA almost immediately, according to her, shortly after it was signed. So, and both of them signed it, so she couldn't speak up against it, but he violated the NDA. Nevertheless, the Thompson matter was relevant to our investigation for at least 3 reasons. One, although we were unable to investigate Miss Thompson's allegations because of the NDA, other witnesses interviewed for this investigation recounted similar conduct by Mr. Zacharias that is consistent with some of Miss Thompson's allegations. This is important because if someone tries to say, maybe all these people are making things up. Well, you got a number of women, never seen each other, never met, but they have similar testimony to what occurred. And they're matching what was reported by Lori Ann Thompson. It's highly unlikely that they're just inventing this stuff. 2, because Mr. Zacharias was able to convince members of the RZIM board and management that he was the victim of extortionists, RZIM did not investigate the allegations. A full investigation might have uncovered evidence of misconduct at a time when Mr. Zacharias was alive to explain himself. 3. Mr. Zacharias' response to the Thompson's allegations included explanations of his emails with Ms. Thompson that surfaced on the internet, raised questions about his credibility. We interviewed witnesses within RZAM who were not satisfied with Mr. Zacharias' explanations, and some reported their belief that they were marginalized for raising questions. He has a if Ravi Zacharias was still alive to answer for his crimes, his attitude to being to doing this is attacking the people that raise these issues up. If they ask questions, if they challenge him, if they question his credibility in what he's doing, if they say, "Oh, this doesn't look good," whatever it is, his modus operandi is to attack them, send them off, and things like that. He doesn't want this information coming out. It's evidence actually that he has something to hide to begin with. We were told that Mr. Zacharias' lead counsel compiled a notebook of evidence relating to the Thompson allegation, and it was made available for review by an RZIM board member and an RZIM public relations consultant. We asked that law firm if we could review that notebook and receive no substantive response. On at least one occasion, when someone within RZIM questioned Mr. Zacharias about the Thompson allegation, he responded in substance that he had provided all of the devices to his attorneys, and they agreed he did nothing wrong. Now, again, this is his attorneys, as Mike Miller pointed out. They're his attorneys that he allegedly provided that. We have Ravi Zacharias' word on it, which apparently didn't amount to much of nothing, and he claimed but he lied about this, because when they got all his devices, it did show incriminating evidence on it. So he lied. He lied and he covered it up. Based on these accounts, we wanted to know if Mr. Zacharias, his personal attorneys, obtained mobile devices that he used as outlined above. There are time gaps in the phones provided to us for this investigation. Whether the data on these phones were extracted, reviewed, or preserved, and whether these devices contain information that would support Ms. Thompson's allegations and communications with other women, like those we found on the phones Mr. Zacharias used both before and after the time of his communications with Ms. Thompson. Because both notebook and the device could contain evidence related to this investigation, we asked the executrix of Mr. Zacharias' estate through her counsel to cooperate with the investigation by authorizing Mr. Zacharias' former counsel to give us access to their file. The executrix declined this request. We also asked both the executrix and the Thompsons, through their respective counsels, to agree to modify the NDA to allow us to speak to the Thompsons and otherwise investigate this matter. The Thompsons would agree to speak with us only if they were fully released from the confidential obligations in the settlement in the agreement. The executrix declined to release the confidentiality obligations in whole or in part for any reason. We have reviewed the evidence and communications that are publicly available and some documents provided to us by witnesses, but because we did not have access to the primary evidence. Now note, they're calling Lori Ann Thompson's testimony primary evidence. All the videos that I've done on the arguments of Matt Dillahunty, you recall, he doesn't consider this evidence at all. But they're saying, okay, we got some evidence, but it would be better if we had the testimony of Lori Ann Thompson. That's the primary evidence they're talking about. Access to the primary evidence that would have allowed us to reach meaningful conclusions. We cannot conclusively say whether Mr. Zacharias solicited nude or any other photographs of Ms. Thompson. However, we found significant evidence on Mr. Zacharias' electronic devices that are probative of her allegations discussed below, meaning they're very similar. Alright, it's going to go into communications with other women, stuff that's found like the phones. Some of the stuff is really bad. You look here where Mr. Zacharias kept translations of certain words and phrases in Thai and Mandarin. The Thai phrases included "I miss you so much," "I want to see your face," and a little bit further. The Mandarin phrase included "softer, lighter," "You are beautiful," "Not enough," "I hope our love lasts forever," "I love you from the bottom of my heart," "I like to have a beautiful memory with you," "Life is so wonderful," uh, "Be because I think that's supposed to be because I could. It says sick, which means this is the way that it's actually in the text message. Because I could meet you. Your lips are especially beautiful, and I love you, darling. These are the words you should be saying to your wife if you're married, and he's married, and he's saying them to other women. All right. The phones also contained communications with and photographs of women who were not his wife, as detailed below. Amorous communication and relationships. Um, he extended his conversation with them over years. You see, he's also making more the same kind of languages that he's used before. May I say to you, you are beautiful, just so beautiful. I cannot help but miss you even more after seeing your picture. It brings a tear longing to my eye, longing to see you again. Meeting her on the flight, he said, has changed my life. He later sent her a picture of himself. Also in 2014, Mr. Zacharias met and exchanged emails with massage therapists who lived in Bangkok. They used pet names such as Sweetheart, Baby, Babe, Darling, Angel, My Precious Little Girl, and Honey. They exchanged selfies. The latest photograph of her is from 2019, and they discussed how much they loved and missed each other. Now understand that's a year before he died. That's maybe even less than a year before he died. During a May 2014 coup d'etat in Thailand, Mr. Zacharias expressed his worry that travel to Bangkok could be stopped. He told her, I know more than ever that you have become the love of my life. I'm waiting to hold you close to my heart again. Please be safe, my angel. I love you and good night from here. He told her to keep him as the only one in your heart. I love you, my dearest. And the block on her name. Their communication imply their relationship had a physical component. Agreed. He goes further. They go further with this. This is pretty bad. In addition to communication, Mr. Zacharias' phone contained over 200 photographs of women much younger than him, including 6 of Lori and Thompson, and dozens of photographs he took of himself. For some of these women, he had only 1 or 2 pictures. However, some women appeared in numerous photographs over time. Among the more significant collections of photographs are 17 images of the young Thai woman who appears to be in her mid-20s, described in the previous section, that were taken between February 2, 2014, February 2nd, 2014, and November 1st, 2019. Remember, he died in May of 2020, so this is not too long before his death. 43 images of a young Indian woman who appears to be in her early 20s, taken between November 9, 2017 and November 8, 2018. 42 images of a blonde woman who appears to be in her mid-30s and appears to work at a spa or saloon, taken between February 8, 2018 and February 12, 2020. And 52 images and 4 videos of a young Malaysian woman who appears to be in her early 20s, taken between August 20, 2017 and June 2nd, 2019. He received photographs from 3 different women over just 2 days in July 2018. It is worth noting again that there are substantial periods of time for which we had no phones to review, including the almost 3-year gap between October 2014 and July 2017. He basically took care of evidence, is pretty much what the implication is. In the majority of these photographs, the women are fully clothed and posing as anyone would for a selfie. We found 6 photographs of a clothed Miss Thompson taken between February 14, 2016 and February 26, 2016 on a BlackBerry device Mr. Zacharias used between July 2017 and January 2018. In some, though, different women are kissing for the camera or otherwise suggestively posed, and one set contained nude images of a young Malaysian saloon employee. The earliest picture of her is dated August 20, 2017, and shows her standing in the lobby of a saloon with Mr. Zacharias and another man. Travel records confirmed that Mr. Zacharias was in Malaysia at the time. Over time, the more pictures of this woman appeared in Mr. Zacharias' phone, most of which were relatively innocuous and show her fully clothed. However, the photographs grew increasingly more suggestive, culminating in two photographs showing her bare breasts dated October 27, 2018, and a video of her fully naked and touching herself dated January 8, 2019. Two of the other women told us that Mr. Zacharias asked for new photographs, which they refused to provide. Mr. Zacharias' statements. While we do not know how Mr. Zacharias would respond to the newer allegations of sexual misconduct, we did consider his statements and actions when confronted, and similar actions in the past, most notably the Thompson matter. Several RZIM staff reported to us his shifting narrative. He created his own narrative, which was alternate. This is what we're going to find when we watch the clips I have on Lori Ann Thompson, because she talks about him shifting the narrative in his favor. Um, uh, Shifting narrative as emails and other relevant facts were publicly leaked and he was forced to explain them. Rather than fostering an environment of truth-seeking and transparency, Mr. Zacharias was strident and inflammatory, meaning he burst out in anger a lot of times, or he lied about it or changed the narrative and so forth. He described his critics as nasty people and lunatics who were engaging in satanic type slander and falsehood. Some RZIM staff told us that he expressed frustration at having to issue an apology at all. He was able to convince many that not only was he innocent, he was a victim of malicious evil. At an all-staff virtual meeting in January 2018, after significant details of the Thompson communication had been made public, Mr. Zacharias offered explanations that many staff members found nonsensical. But some staff members reported to us that when they expressed doubts about Mr. Zacharias' story, they were ignored, marginalized, and accused of disloyalty. We also have the benefit of a public statement Mr. Zacharias made on December 3rd, 2017, after the Thompson matter settled. The statement includes claims that were misleading or false. He admitted that he should not have engaged in an ongoing communication with a woman who was not his wife, but Lori Ann Thompson was neither the first nor the last instance of him doing so. Nor was Miss Thompson the only woman from whom he received photographs. Indeed, approximately 3 weeks after filing his RICO lawsuit, he appeared in a photograph with the Malaysian woman who sent him over 50 photographs over the next year, including nudes. He received a photograph from her the very next day after releasing this December 3rd, 2017 statement. While he told his staff members that his real mistake in the Thompson matter was not alerting someone that he was receiving photographs of another woman, we have no indication that he ever went to RZI management or the board on the more than 200 occasions he received photographs of women during and after the Thompson matter. He further claimed, "In my 45 years of marriage to Margie, I have never engaged in any inappropriate behavior of any kind. Much of the inappropriate massage therapy behavior discussed above occurred prior to the Thompson matter, and Mr. Zacharias' lengthy text and email communication with the massage therapist from Bangkok, whose culinary schooling he arranged for through RZIM and whom he called the love of his life, occurred in 2014. His claim that he had long made it his practice not to be alone with a woman other than Margie and our daughters was similarly false. As reported above, Mr. Zacharias' inappropriate conduct often occurred when he was alone with massage therapists. Because his need for massage treatments was well known and accepted, he was able to hide his misconduct in plain sight. He further stated that after the reflection, he learned that the physical safeguards he had long practiced to protect my integrity should have extended to include digital communication safeguards. As the architect of those physical safeguards, Mr. Zacharias well knew how to elude them. This is their conclusion. Our investigation was limited to Mr. Zacharias' sexual misconduct, and even as to that issue, it was not exhaustive. We acknowledge that we have not spoken to all individuals who may have relevant information to provide. More witnesses may come up. We strive to balance the need for completeness with the need for expediency, and we are confident that we have uncovered sufficient evidence to conclude that Mr. Zacharias engaged in sexual misconduct. The evidence is very strong in favor of him doing it. There's no doubt. 200 witnesses, evidence for on his phones and electronic devices they sent to other women, nudes that have been found. Now, again, I didn't read this part in the report this time around. I did the first time I did the video. I didn't read it this time around. But in the report, it said their purpose was not just to wonder if he always did inappropriate behavior, but whether he ever did. That was what they were trying to investigate. And because that's what they were trying to investigate, the question that they answer is yes, he did. Now, that don't mean he always did it, but he did do it, just the same. And there were nude photos that were found in the phone and things like that. There's no doubt at all that he did do this. What about the collateral damage he left behind? Why talk about this kind of stuff in an apologetic video? Why even make a video about this? Lots of other Christian apologists have been talking about it. It's last couple of weeks. It's just been all over YouTube. But why do it? The reason is because even though Ravi Zacharias is now dead, he left collateral damage. He left victims of sexual assault, sexual abuse, of him going after them and grooming them. As Christians, we can learn from this, but there's also going to be skeptics going to pounce on this and attack it. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But before we do, I want you to hear from one of these victims, the only victim that we actually know by name, Lori Thompson. I've got a series of clips to show you that she reported on YouTube, and it's emotional. Just warning you ahead of time, it's an emotional downfall. So be warned ahead of time. I watched it a number of times, and it sends tears to my eyes just about every time I see it. Well, here it is. Lori Thompson, a series of clips. Or it's not the full video. I will be linking the full video in the description box below. But this is a series of clips from that video, that official statement that she made on YouTube, and made it public to YouTube. And so I'm gonna show a series of clips, and I want you to watch it, and deeply think on this issue of why it is that we have to speak about this.
I met Ravi Zacharias in June 2014 at a UCB Canada Businessman Luncheon in Kingston, Ontario, when my husband Brad, a businessman and avid listener of RZ's work and a regular annual donor to UCB Canada, sponsored and hosted a table. At the time, we lived an hour away, and I was weary of traveling back and forth every day to Kingston, Ontario, where I was then a mature student at Queen's University. It is my belief that RZ targeted me from the moment that he saw me. He had his assistant take my email at that event, and an online, seemingly innocent dialogue ensued for an extended period of time. RZ appeared to me to be one of the safest, most well-respected, and honorable persons in whom to confide and seek wise counsel. His position as a global representative of the gospel was one of extraordinary and unquestioned trust. I simply had no reason to suspect that he had any nefarious intentions. I think this position of naive trust is equally understandable and relatable. I wish I had never had the misfortune of meeting RZ in person. In hindsight, attending that luncheon was one of the worst days of my life, and as you can well imagine, I have had a few. I tried to tell a Christian counselor what was happening to me. He told me not to tell anyone, especially my husband, and that he could see RZ's draw to me, and that if anyone ever found out, the kingdom of God would be irreparably damaged. I became suicidal. Even after the abuse stopped, I stayed in touch with RZ. He was the only person that knew what had happened to me. In time, I told my sister, but I was never, ever going to tell anyone else. I traveled to a counseling intensive with Jerry and Denise Basil. They were recommended to me by friends in the ministry. I had no intention of telling them, exactly what happened or whom it happened with. When I finally disclosed to them, together we drafted an email to cut off contact with RZ and to tell my husband about the abuse. I was contacted by text, email, and phone by RZ. Once I had sent a final email to him, he threatened to commit suicide if I broke my silence. I was terrified in that moment and for a long time to come. To my betrayer, telling anyone was a betrayal. Abusers not only demand silence, they enforce it. When I disclosed the same day to my husband what happened to me, he was devastated. I contacted an advocate who put us in contact with a trauma-informed therapist. Daily, I was not sure if my husband was going to come home. Daily, he was not certain if I would be alive when he got home. RZ used a former local church abuse experience where my husband and I had been victim of financially and spiritually abusive cleric to support his fantastical claim that we were a litigious couple who sued people for financial gain. While this narrative is as verifiably false as it is reprehensible, it was also widely parroted and propagated by RZIM. RZ as an individual and RZIM as an institution took a prior abuse situation that fractured my husband and I years ago and used that information to publicly and falsely crucify us. The consequences of trying to hold RZ to account for his abusive and predatory behavior was that my husband and I not only endured endless interpersonal atrocities, we were also publicly and widely humiliated and vilified. We were horrified and outraged and had some financial resources to use. We also had limited personal resources with which to fight an individual with as much power and virtually limitless resources. We were barely surviving, is what it was. RZ reported that he had a donor who was willing to fund the full cost of litigation, and that this process could take several more years. To settle with RZ, of course, seemed like the only viable and indeed the only practical option. Both parties signed a non-disclosure agreement, and we had no idea that he would break it almost immediately. Even when he broke it so flagrantly, we were still unable to collect ourselves enough to even think about the protracted litigation process that we were promised. Being abused costs far more than can ever be properly recompensed. It has been reported elsewhere that I had received a financial settlement from RZ. More than half of that money was spent. More than half of that money reportedly received was spent on legal fees. Approximately another $33,000 was spent on therapy, which is ongoing, and a further $30,000 was invested in a Master's of Child Advocacy and Policy from Montclair State University. I have also lost my annual income as a healthcare professional, yet astonishingly, there remains those who still accuse me of being in this for the money. This false narrative was started by RZ, but it has been widely and circulated publicly and privately by RZIM and RZIM supporters. When we met RZ, we no longer attended church, but our children were still attending faith-based schools. we took our summer holidays in a faith-based community. After the press release issued in Christianity Today on December 3rd, 2017, it became untenable to remain in the same community. RZ portrayed my husband as a man who pimped his wife for a monetary gain. This was not only widely believed, it was also untenable and false. I knew the world to be an unsafe place before I met Ravi Zacharias, but I yet had hope that there were some safe and sacred spaces. I no longer live with that hope. I trusted him. I trusted Christendom. That trust is irreparably and catastrophically shattered. I yet believe Christ, even if he's not true, as he is the highest ethic that I can find. They, the religious elite, stripped him, beat him mercilessly, called him all manner of names, and publicly crucified him too. Even though I was a survivor before I met RZ, having met and come to know him was one of the most traumatizing, soul-destroying, faith-crushing seasons of my life. He tore down everything that I had built, that I thought was beautiful. My marriage, my husband, my home, my faith, my family's faith, my capacity to mother, my mental and physical health, and what little good repute I had, and ultimately my entire career path. Most of what matters in life is held together by healthy relationships, secure attachments, and trust. The betrayal trauma that we incurred because of RZ and RZIM crushed our relationship to each other, to God, and severed our connection with the wider faith community. While I am immensely grateful that we still have each other, I am grieved that we have lost so much faith, nearly all our friends, and are inhibited in the process of making new ones. My privacy has been expunged and replaced with secrecy. Never again will I be hired for work without someone reading about what happened to me at his hands on the internet. Never again will privacy be fully mine. I accept that as my new reality, but I will never come to agree with it. RZ's secrets, sins, and public shame do not belong to me, and I verbally and publicly send them back to him and RZIM. I have repeatedly requested release from a non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement. To date, no release has come. So be it. My words belong to me, and I take them back today.
That's, I told you this video would be an emotional ride. I wasn't wrong. He shattered a person's faith. He shattered her ability to have faith in Christianity. Now, we're going to talk more about that, whether or not, if the truth of Christianity somehow rises or falls on the basis of the actions of another. But I want you to watch that video to understand the impact it has had on them. This is the reason why we're talking about this stuff, even though the man has passed away. This is why we're talking about this stuff, even though it occurred over time for a number of years. Women like that were sexually assaulted by Ravi Zacharias. We can ignore it, we can deny it, we can try to justify it, and none of that's going to make this situation right or go away. Trying to excuse it or justify it or put it under a rug somewhere is what Ravi Zacharias was trying to do. And it didn't work out very much for him to do it either. Christianity is an open faith. We are an open book. And we shall always be that way. You know, the Bible tells us that we should confess our sins before another. We have no evidence, in case you're wondering, because you might ask me in the comment section. In case you're wondering, there's no evidence of Ravi Zacharias ever repenting for this sin or ever showing remorse. He justified it, he excused it away, attacked those who even questioned his credibility. He lied about it and he covered it up. And he committed it all the way up until the time, almost close to the time of his death, that we can trace back and know evidentially for sure. There's strong evidence in favor of it. There's no doubt in anyone's mind. I have yet to find a Christian apologetic video that said they didn't agree that Ravi Zacharias did this. They all said that he did it. They all agree with the evidence, as do I. Now, let's talk about that. I talked about the victims that he left behind first. I talked about the evidence that we have that anyone was victimized as a result of Ravi Zacharias. Now I want to talk about the other side to that coin. What does this mean or impact on the truth of Christianity? Here's the truth of the matter. Nothing. I'm not minimizing the pain that Ravi Zacharias did by a long shot. I'm not minimizing the horrific of the sin that he had committed, or somehow minimizing the pain that the victims of his assaults had went through. I'm not doing that at all. What I'm simply saying is that the truth of Christianity is independent from the characters of the people that hold to the view. Sometimes people will often point to people's inconsistencies as proof that what they're saying is not true. But this is actually a fallacy in logic called the tu-ku-kwe fallacy. It's a form of the ad hominem fallacy. Sometimes we hear this a lot where people are being accused, or the church is being accused of being a bunch of hypocrites, and that's the reason why they don't go to church or believe in Christianity and things like that. This is the tu-ku-kwe fallacy. It doesn't really follow logically, because logically the truth of a position or a proposition is completely independent from the characters of those who hold to it. David Wood has this interesting analogy on his site. Like I said, it will be linked in the description box below, where David Wood said, if I told you 2 plus 2 is 4, and then I punch you in the mouth, that doesn't change the fact that 2 plus 2 is 4. It doesn't change the arguments. It doesn't change the evidence. It doesn't change the facts. It doesn't do any of those things. And then he goes further and he says, but if I told you 2 plus 2 is 5 and then buy you a car, he's doing something really, really nice for you, doesn't change the truthfulness of the argument. Sometimes I've seen some really nice people have some really bad beliefs. They're a part of cults, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness. Truth, though, exists independent of the character of the person holding to the view. Someone could be very mean but hold to something very true. But someone who's very, very nice could be very nice but hold to something that's very, very false. Those things are not connected epistemically. Okay? We can't connect those personally. I'm going to show you a very, very brief PowerPoint presentation that I made concerning the tu-ku-kwe fallacy. Let's get to that. All right. You see here, this is alleged inconsistencies and the truth of a proposition. All right. The tu-ku-kwe fallacy is a form of the ad hominem fallacy. This is where one is claiming the argument is flawed by pointing out that one making the argument is not acting consistently with the claims of the argument. We could probably put argument, position, facts, whatever. Point is that you're assuming that they're somehow connected with the truthfulness of the position, the argument, etc. is connected with the character or the actions of the person. This is coming from the definition comes from Dr. Bo Bennett, Logically Fallacious, page 31. Is the tu-ku-kwe fallacy this is committing the tu-ku-kwe fallacy when someone argues for the inconsistency of a proposition is somehow connected with the character or actions of that person. So if, say, for example, Ravi Zacharias committed this horrible sin, which he did, does that mean that we can't trust the arguments that he used? No. Does that mean we can't trust the truthfulness of Christianity? No. Does that mean that Christian apologetics itself is bad? No. In fact, I like the way Frank Turek put it, and I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist podcast that talked about this as well, that no matter how many preachers, like if you found a preacher that committed adultery on his wife, that sort of thing, there are millions of preachers that don't do that at all. I mean, So to sit there and point to one particular person and say, well, yeah, but they did this and this and this and this, and so that somehow we need to stereotype that and think that represents all preachers. No. There are millions of others that don't do it at all. And same thing is true with Christian apologists. Although there are some that may engage in a double life, most of them are usually sincere, open book. They confess before you the faults and failures. I do too. I've had struggles with sin, and I've had struggles. I'll even admit that I've even had struggles with pornography and things like that in my life. And I'll admit that. I had those kinds of struggles. But I confess them before others. I admit them to others, and I resolve them, and I repent to God for them. I don't keep on doing them. You know, in fact, I haven't done that in a long, long time because of that. And so, and as Christians, we should learn from this. What did Ravi do? When he was approached with it, he was infuriated. He got angry, lashed out. He lied about it, covered it up, and he showed no evidence of repentance. Now, some people question whether he was ever a Christian to begin with or whether he truly was a Christian apologist. But the reality is that I'm not going to really assess whether he was truly a Christian or not. But I think he was a Christian apologist. But he was a very well-respected Christian apologist. He's no longer that today. This information has been leaked out. This report was done only a couple weeks ago, and it's been all over the internet. It's been all over YouTube. All the Christian apologetic community is talking about it. This is not something that we want to do as Ravi did and brush it under the rug and hope it goes away. Rather, instead, we want to face this outright. And of course, I've got skeptics that watch my channel. And so I want to make sure that other skeptics understand that the truthfulness of a position is independent of the character of the person making the statements. So, in other words, how does this impact things like the cosmological argument? Nothing. It doesn't affect them at all. How does this affect the teleological argument of existing God? Nothing at all. How does this affect the moral argument? Nothing at all. How does this affect evidence from science, from history, the evidence we have for the resurrection? Nothing at all. Even if Ravi Zacharias used every bit of these arguments, in which I think he probably did, not one single bit of these arguments, not one, is somehow impacted by this. So this doesn't really impact Christian apologetics at all. I'm still a Christian apologist. I would recommend Christian apologetics for anyone. Christian apologetics is a biblical concept. It comes out of 1 Peter 3:15. And I recommend this to anyone. So this does not impact Christian apologetics or our arguments. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not affected by it. Impacted in that sense, because we are affected emotionally by this. It does come as a huge shock. We don't like it, but it is. Let me read this last statement that I made. Truth is independent of the character of the person making the argument. It is the argument that is being presented that is up for evaluation and consideration, not the person who is presenting it. Those are really good words to hold to. So, what should we make of this situation? What we can make of it is that Ravi Zacharias was human like anyone else. What he did was very, very wrong. And he made choices after choices after choices that was always in the wrong direction. He led a double life. He systematically and methodologically chased after these women for his own sexual appetite. So he is rightly classified as a sex predator. People that refer to Ravi as that, and I think all of them are referring to Ravi as that, is completely correct. I don't like the term. It's a strong term, strong words, but if we're calling it like we see it, like the evidence shows, there's just no doubt that that's the case. I wish it wasn't. I wish I could turn back time, change everything. Which someone did a better job of investigating the Lord Thompson incident, so that we can catch it, years before his death. At least 3 years before his death. But unfortunately, that didn't happen because everybody wanted to believe that he was innocent of all charges. I think I might have had a vague recollection that he was being accused of that at the time, but I think I didn't really pay much attention to it or look it up. And that's on our fault. We should have believed Lori Ann Thompson. We should have did a better job investigating. We should have solved electronic devices for ourselves instead of taking Ravi Zacharias' word for it. We're all at fault for that. Maybe in the future we'll do a better job of not being that way. Alright. I hope you like this video. I am so sorry that we had to deal with a very sad issue. I didn't want to deal with this, but I felt in my heart that it needed to be dealt with. It needed to be talked about. We cannot brush this kind of things up under the rug and hope it goes away. Ravi Zacharias left behind victims that should not have been. These victims should not have been victims. These victims should not have been victimized by Ravi Zacharias, but they were. They need closure, and above all, they need prayer. They need prayer. Pray for Lori Ann Thompson. Even pray for the unnamed witnesses that we have that this has happened to. Pray for the apologetic community. Pray for Christianity, that we come together as the body of Christ, that we can be a united front on this. We have to do a better job of making sure this never happens again. I think RZIM released a press statement where they said that they're going to do a better job of trying to keep this situation from ever happening again. I think I heard the UK branch of RZIM broke away and changed their name because they didn't even want to be associated with Ravi Zacharias. Because remember, RZIM stands for Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. So it's pretty bad. It's pretty deep. It cuts pretty deep, as it should be cut pretty deep. And whether you're an atheist or a Christian, you should still be impacted by this, because this is fellow human beings that have been victimized by another person. But does that impact the truth of Christianity? No, not at all. Next week, we might be talking about, in the following part 2, we're going to be talking about the martyrdoms of the disciple, where I'm using the term fallen in a different sense. There is also a debate that I've been looking at that I might be doing, and it's possible I might be doing a debate review in between some of these videos, or at least between 2 of the videos. I don't know yet if that's the case, but either way, this is not an open-ended series. I will end it in 3 parts, and I will discuss more about this being independent of the truth of Christianity, because sometimes Christians are accused of doing atrocious kind of things, and so I think it's important for us to talk about those things, and whether that impacts truth of Christianity. So we'll come back to the two-way fallacy that gets committed a lot as well. Please like and subscribe to this video. If you're new to this channel, understand this is not a normal video that I have. I normally don't do this kind of stuff at all on my apologetic channel. It's mostly geared to learning about Christian apologetics, making a case for Christianity, talking to skeptics, and dealing with skeptical objections to Christianity and things of that nature. This was primarily focused on the situation involving Ravi Zacharias, the evidence for it, in case people, because I'm very big about evidence, and I want to make sure people understand there is strong evidence for it, and as well as trying to resolve this issue, unite ourselves as the body of Christ, pray for the victims of Ravi Zacharias, pray for Ravi Zacharias' family too, by the way, because they're just as much victims of it as anyone else. I'm not minimizing the victimization of the women that he hurt, but I'm talking about on a different end. They were blindsided by Ravi Zacharias, lied to, and this matter was covered up, and they're feeling the impact of it now, and it's not good on them either. So I don't want anyone to be against them, or that you will pray for retribution on their part as well. And of course, I wanted to talk a little bit about the truthfulness of Christianity, whether that's impacted by this, because that is a little bit more geared to my channel a little bit. And of course, I will deal with this more extensively in the third part. Hopefully, the second video will be better. This is my first, as I mentioned earlier, this is my first time using OBS. Tell me in the comment section whether I did a good job with it, whether you got any advice or for me if you've used OBS before. I would love to hear it. I would also love to hear what you think of this situation. I understand it's a touchy one. I understand it's a controversial one. I understand it's not easy to even think about that Ravi Zacharias had done with it. When I first heard about it, like I said, it took me a minute a lot longer than that, to wrap my mind around this, and said, this just can't be. I was just completely shocked when I first heard it. And if this is your first time hearing it, I imagine similarly it might happen to you. So I'll try to be a little bit graceful in the comment section if you have issues or whatnot with it. But understand this is important for us to talk about. We don't need to brush this under the rug and act like it doesn't exist. It needs to be talked about. The entire apologetic community is talking about it, so it's not just me. It's all over the YouTube at this point. That's why I was wondering if I didn't have anything meaningful to add to this conversation. But I feel like me and my audience, we really need to be talking about this as well. This is not something that we can just brush under the rug. So please be back and join me for part 2 of this series, where we talk about the apostles' martyrdoms, because that's very interesting. Because that a lot of times resurrection experts are saying, the martyrdom is proof that they weren't lying about it. But skeptics often point, well, yeah, but most of them are legendary and things like that nature. And so we're going to go over that, and we're going to go over some of the evidence and that stuff of the martyrdoms of the apostles. And again, we're using fallen in a different sense in the next video. So hopefully it's not going to be as emotionally decimating as this video was. Please like the video. Please click on the links in the description box. I'm going to have 5 links in there, one for the full report, so you can read the entire report for yourself. One for Lori Thompson's full video, if you want to watch the whole video, and 3 links to videos, apologists that did a really good job with this, and of course other apologists do a good job with that. Mike Winger, who read the entire report and commented on it. David Wood, who does a really good job of talking about the truthfulness of Christianity being independent of the character of the person, and Mike Licona, who does a 5-minute video of a similar nature. And all 3 of these are really good, and I would recommend watching other videos as well. If this is your first stop in learning about this situation, don't make it your last. Do as I do, research the stuff and look it up at what other people have said about it. And I prefer you to do that along with reading the report in its entirety and watching Lori Thompson's video in its entirety before you come back and say, I disagree with Brian, I don't think you should talk about these matters. Well, then read up on it before responding, because these kinds of situations are a doozy, and they're not easy to talk about. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't even want to do this video. Originally, I was going to do one on alleged contradictions. Eventually, I'm going to get to that video series. But I decided to turn this into a video series. I thought it would be interesting to do a video series about this, because I wanted some semblance of how I do or the kind of videos I do on this channel to be reflected in this. But like I said, it's a video that's a tough one. Well, I guess that'll be it. And keep in mind, though, again, we shouldn't brush this under the rug. We should be speaking about this. It's always my purpose on this channel to keep you in the know. Okay? We should always learn the facts the critics don't want you to know. This is Brian Keith Bowen of Apologetics 101, signing off.